Hi there, welcome back to the channel and thanks for joining me once again. So today we've got something a little bit special in actual fact. It's a Wingnut Wings kit, so we kind of had a pretty good idea of what we're going to expect. But this is a model kit, 1/32 of course. It's the Fokker E.II Eindecker. But more importantly, it is the aircraft flown by Max Immelmann. Now, Max Immelmann is a name, he's obviously an ace from the First World War, but his name is synonymous with skill and aerobatics, and in fact the name Immelmann has become known as part of an actual aerial manoeuvre, the Immelmann turn. I fly radio control aircraft, which you sometimes may have seen dotted around in the background of my garage here, and I actually use this technique myself frequently. So I'll explain what that is before we get into the kit, and I hope you World War I fans will excuse me for having the temerity to use a World War II plane, because that's all I had really to hand, a Spitfire. But what it is, if you imagine you have your aircraft going in this direction, so, and you know it encounters perhaps a gaggle of enemy aircraft, and they are going in the opposite direction, and he needs to turn around. Well, if he does a turn, it's going to take quite a lot of time, a significant amount of time, and he will lose a lot of distance to the aircraft that have passed over him or under him. So what this chap Immelmann did in the German Air Force is he developed this technique, which people had never done before, of basically yanking back on the stick into a steep loop as if he's about to do the loop, and then gets to the top inverted, and then so half a loop and then half a roll, and then he is instantly in the right direction, exactly where he wants to be. Quite a clever bit of ingenuity that went into this. You know, obviously he was a bit of a daredevil, but it's not something that, you know, when you first hear about the Immelmann roll or the Immelmann turn, there is actually two aerial manoeuvres that both get called an Immelmann turn, and this can get very confusing. So the other one is, and I think it was quite unique in some aircraft could do this and some couldn't actually, but in the other one you climb very steeply like this, and then you basically go full left with your rudder at the top when you get your enemies pass to the side. And then what you do is you drop, basically almost a stall turn, and you drop out, and again it's a way of getting height and quickly turning. But that uses the rudder, that's not a loop and roll, which is what the most commonly, that is what the Immelmann refers to. But people often refer to it as both. So if you ever hear this term, try and clarify which one they mean, because depending on what country you're in and what the history is, you know, local traditions and cultures in the aviation industry, they do refer to both those things as an Immelmann turn. So obviously Max Immelmann was quite a daredevil. Anyway, we'll put the Spitfire, I'll get that back into World War II where it belongs over there. So there you go, so that's quite an interesting fact. Now then, this is one of these Wingnut Wings kits which comes with a resin figure, and I've been desperate to get hold of this for ages. Haven't seen any around at a half sensible price, and this one did come up. This was not cheap, okay, this was not cheap, but it wasn't as expensive as some of the prices that I've bandied around, which are accurate for a lot of these kits. So the seller, I think, maybe just, I don't know, it seems fine. So I guess the seller just wanted to perhaps get his hands on some cash, and we have a nice example. So without further ado, let's get cracking and have a look what's in the box. So first of all, on the sides, I'll bring you in so you can have a really good look. Let's have a look at what we've done. Of course, we've got this Max Immelmann figure, as you can see, right on the side there. So, German ace Max Immelmann was credited with 15 of his aerial victories while flying these Fokker Eindeckers, including several in Fokker E.II 37s during the late part of 1915. The Fokker Eindecker was armed with machine guns synchronised to fire through the propeller, made its first kill on the 1st day of August 1915. And used the 80 horsepower Oberrussel, also known as the Gnome, 80 horsepower engine. It was a powered wing warping Fokker E.I by Max Immelmann and marked the beginning of the Fokker Scourge, which caused a lot of problems because basically it looks like a bit of a string bag, especially from the side view, but this plane was relatively powerful, sufficient but very light, so it was very manoeuvrable and rapid. I mean, it could do 94 miles an hour, and in the hands of a skilled pilot, obviously, and he was extraordinarily skilled, it could do a lot of damage. It goes on to say, as you can see, it was almost identical to the late production E.III, which followed in August 15, and then updated again. Later one started appearing with internal ammunition storage and a wing-mounted compass. The engine was the Oberrussel E.II, powered the E.IV, and initially fitted with 3 IMG-08 machine guns, which proved to be one gun too many. Yeah, probably chewed through the ammunition. It made it heavy as well. First appeared in 2015, September 1915, but it did not arrive into the front in large numbers until March to April in 1916. By this time, the appearance of the highly manoeuvrable French Nieuport II and the British DH-2 marked the beginning of the end of the Fokker scourge. And this, of course, is the story of World War One, like a lot of big conflicts, World War Two included, where they have a window, don't they, these aircraft, where they are the dominant factor, and then somebody will bring out one that's even more impressive and it gets dropped. It rendered the wing warping German monoplanes obsolete. Most Eindeckers have been withdrawn from the front line by December 1916. Another thing I should tell you about Max Immelmann that's rather interesting, and forgive me if I don't get my pronunciations here right, because it's always a challenge, isn't it? They say that this, the geared machine gun, what's the actual expression? Synchronised, yeah. Synchronised geared machine guns. They reckon that the Germans actually copied it off the French, the Morier-Saulnier, I don't know if I get it right, because they came out with one, and it was about 2 months later this then got changed and had a geared machine gun. But they were not very reliable, and they had a lot of issues with this system. And there's lots of stories, if you go on Wikipedia and elsewhere and start reading up on this, lots of stories about them shooting off their own propeller blades because the gearing wasn't quite right. A little bit experimental, perhaps. And if you do that, there's several stories about, including the death of Max Immelmann, actually, which was in 18th of June 1916. So it's toward the end of the life of the aircraft, really. And it's not clear whether he was shot down by some British pilot. Forget the aircraft now, but it was an aircraft, two-seater with a gunner at the back, over Lawns in Belgium, as it is now. And he'd shot down a British plane, and then he got caught by this gunner who was obviously quite a sharpshooter who got the DSO for his efforts. But the historians cannot decide whether he was shot down actually by having his propeller shot off by this gunner, or whether this gearing went wrong again and he actually shot off his own propeller, and his aircraft basically sort of vibrated to pieces and fell out of the sky, essentially. So there's a lot of debate about this. It's not clear. Historians don't seem to be able to make their minds up. There's not enough evidence, probably, that's why. But this system was not good. In fact, I mentioned the Morier-Saulnier, which I can never pronounce, the French aircraft. Pardon me for this. But the French were very worried for the same issue, technical issue. So they actually armour-plated the propeller blades so that if the bullets hit it, it wouldn't shoot the prop off. So you can see, again, at that point in the war, it was quite early still, the first 2 years of the war, very experimental stuff, and it caused a lot of accidents. And there's lots of stories about these shooting their own propellers off and dropping out of the sky. Because if you shoot one blade off, the thing is going to vibrate so much it's virtually going to rip the engine out of the aeroplane. It's just catastrophic. The other thing about Immelmann, which I think is very sad, he died in this accident, obviously, and he fell out of the sky. But a very, very recent development. He is buried in Germany near Dresden, and he's got this he's in I was going to say a mausoleum. It's the word I'm looking for. It's not a grave as such. It's I'll show you this if I can. There's a picture right of it here, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's bring you in. It's a tomb. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. Tomb. He's entombed. And there we go. What we have, it's in quite a nice area, but there's his grave, and on top of it we have this rather remarkable statue, if you like. Basically, it's a naked man, completely naked. In his right hand he has a big sword. yeah, I mean a weapon, as in a metal sword. And his left hand, he seems to be sort of pointing up to the stars. If you can see that. Anyway, sadly, this figure and the ball he's standing on was stolen, and the grave was actually desecrated on the 31st of January this year, just 4 months ago. Very, very sad, and the police are still investigating this crime apparently. Luckily, somebody, I presume there's some residences opposite this road, this is like on a corner, and some sharp-eyed residents saw these guys, 2 men apparently, making off with this. They cut it here at the bottom of the ball, separating it from the stone, and took this statue. And of course it's unique, and they think it's been stolen to order, the German police. It's very sad, you know. I mean, this was a man who was, you know, the very fact that they named an aerobatic manoeuvre after him has made him basically lives on, you know, as a legend, because he was clearly a brilliantly skilled pilot, and I think he deserved better than that. So whoever did that, shame on them, you know, for what, some brass or copper or whatever. Absolutely disgusting, to be honest. No matter what side you're on, you know, he was a brave pilot and served his country, and that should be respected, I think. So that's really disgusting. Anyway, we'll put that aside and let's get into the Wingnut Wings masterpiece model. So we've got Immelmann October to November 1915 is the one that's pitched on the side, but there are others available. So let's have a look what's inside the box. Be very, very gentle with this, because although I do own this. This is I'm quite pleased to say that I've actually got another one that's quite worth having, I think. So we've got some beautiful Wingnut Wings. I was going to say instructions, but brochure I prefer to call it. We've got some decals. The seller very kindly put some nice bubble wrap in for us. We've got a figure that's in resin, and then we've got our sprues. So let's have a look. Now, this is a wing warping style, so it's one of the early, technology of aircraft, World War I monoplanes. So, let's take a look. I think we'll start with the decals, as we normally do. Let's bring you into this. And we've got some nice sort of classical German, the sort of Christian style, I always call them Christian style crosses. Crusader crosses or whatever you want to call them, but quite a few stencils as well on this one. We've also got some instrumentation, a compass I think it is, and then we have some beautiful photo etch on the back, and basically that consists of, looks like it's the machine gun, the cooling mesh around the machine gun, and we've got some seat belts, and I think there's a bit of a radiator, perhaps a couple of blanking plates here, and the gun sight, of course, if you can make that out. Yeah, that's cool. Wingnut Wings was a nice thing to see, isn't it? Then we've got the instructions, so let's have a look at that. So I've already given you the history, so we won't read all that again, obviously. Interesting that, as I mentioned, these things were kind of the first German aircraft that had the synchronised machine guns. Synchronised most of the time, I think is the best way to put it, because as I say, from what I've read, they were a bit unreliable and there was a lot of accidents. So it's basically, it says it's a steel tubular framework that was painted in light grey green, and then it's basically clear doped linen over the top. So it's quite a very simple, early days monoplane, early technology construction. And as we open the lovely brochure style, we get quite a few parts we're not going to use that they've sort of purpled out here, as you can see. Several optional different machine guns that are not in use, 1 or 2 blanking plates, hangers, brackets and things like that, and a propeller that you're not going to use as well. And then it shows our Max Immelmann figure. By the way, Immelmann died in this final encounter over Lons I mentioned. He was only 25 years old when he died, so it's a bit sad really, because like a lot of these guys, they were very young, but they were clearly very talented, but never really got to use their talent for too long. High rate of attrition, obviously. So we start with the cockpit, control column, which looks again almost like a Wright Brothers one, doesn't it? It's very early days, this is. And then we have got building up your seating area and your toe straps for controlling rudders. And this says here, if you can see it, I'll zoom you into this photo. There we go. I believe that this photo is taken to document how a tangled Spandau trigger cable caused Ernst Udet to crash on takeoff on his first Fokker E.II flight on November 1915 at Habsheim. Note the empty bell container, A28. Oh, okay. Many interesting details are visible here. On William Frankel's Fokker E.II with the undergoing repair or servicing. The dark stained painted plywood board, A18, that's the kit part they're referring to. That's what threw me. I thought they were talking about what's in the photo. And it says, revealing the original plywood colour, other fittings on the cockpit wall for holding the bracket that was used to secure the wingtips when they folded alongside the fuselage for transport. Okay, fuel tank right in front of you. And then we have got, we've got a motorbike outside the centre of it. Got the fuel tank right in front of you, and then we've got, you're bringing it all together, so that goes in front with the ammunition, empty ammunition box in this case. And then we have internal rigging. So, internal rigging guide, rigging materials are supplied, not supplied it says. Okay, so this is where it gets a bit dangerous, doesn't it, with rigging, you know. It's going to be complicated. Cockpit frame detail from a Navy Fokker E.III S73 undergoing extensive repairs. Note the internal bracing cable detail, especially the way the bracing cables cross the load down behind the rudder bar to allow more room for the pilot's feet. Also note the hand air pump A43, oh yes, gosh, that's impressive, isn't it? They use a lot of these hand air pumps, of course, priming the fuel and things like that. Darkly stained painted rear of the cockpit and rectangular hatch openings in the floor for downward visibility, so obviously he was able to look out like a window in the floor. Now then, what have we got here? Fuselage swords. And we've got a guide on how to paint them, and it's warning you that you need to remove the late style reinforcement patch detail. Obviously there's several variants of this plane, I suspect, and handle for sliding view panel. So it's actually like a like a serving hatch where you slide it up and down to have a look out. So that's impressive. And then we've got note, glue the bottom of the fuselage. Now glue the bottom of the fuselage. And then we have got cockpit combing going on there. And what's it saying here? The cockpit combing detail. There we go. Cockpit combing detail from an unidentified Fokker E.II crashed by Otto Parschau at Rettel. Note the inline fuel oil filler caps fairing to the fuel gauge, ammunition feed chute, and flash guard. That's the flash guard from the machine gun, of course, so it doesn't set anything on fire at the front. See Wingnut Wings for hints and tips on advice for painting the turned cowling effect. Wow, okay. I'll talk about Wingnut Wings advice sheets a little bit later. I've actually got one of those. I think I should share it with you. And then we've got the Oberrussel Gnome engine, 100 horsepower. So this is obviously the slightly uprated one, because I think they were quoting 80 horsepower before, weren't they? And you've got your painting guide there, which is very helpful. Push rods going on, wiring guide, and well, wire not included. Ooh, getting very detailed here, obviously. And yes, a bit of work's going to have to go into this. It says here, Max Immelmann points to salient details of Fokker visiting dignitaries. It says points hour. I think that's a typo by Wingnut Wings. It should say points out. Salient details, I was right the first time, of the Fokker E.II to visiting dignitaries on the 15th of November 1915. Okay. Then we get into your undercarriage. This looks like a real string bag, doesn't it? Again, just lots of rigging on this plane. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, I've got to say. Rigging and more rigging and tensioning wise for the undercarriage. So that's going to be something you need to probably use the photograph as a reference for, because it's going to be a little bit tricky, I think. And then we've got showing you the engine cowling and this, what do they call it, the flash eliminator. Cooling jacket, flash guard, yeah, that's the flash guard there. Here. And then we've got the positioning of the, it's like the geometry, isn't it, of the actual undercarriage, which looks really tricky. Wheel and tyre detail from the Navy Fokker with showing the innen stencil and inner tube access flap. Oh, I see, innen being in. Okay. Many, not all, German World War One tyres were made from light grey rubber. Yeah, they're not black. It's very typical. That's helpful they've shown that photo. It's so easy to think they should be black, and they shouldn't be. A bit like bicycle tyres weren't black in those days either. They were often like a yellowy tan, or they were grey. And it says, undercarriage detail and wing warping cable rigging from a Fokker E.IV thought to be 63815. Though this is a Fokker E.IV, the detail shown here is also pertinent for the E.II, so obviously had the same setup in terms of the wing warping rigging underneath. So we've got wings and tail plane, and cut for fairing clearance. Cut for fairing clearance, okay. Remove for the compass detail. So this depends on which one you're doing, obviously, because it mentions the later ones have got the compass and the fairing. And then you've got your Eindecker, and it says paint control, horns and metal tubes, and it gives you a bit of an idea about what the paint colour should be, we think, because it's always very vague. And then finally it's the rudder, isn't it? Quite a nice looking rudder that goes on there. Rudder and elevator detail, it says. From the E.II, note the control horns of the patches around the cable exits on top of the fuselage. Oh, yeah, it's all quite exposed, isn't it? On the other side here it says wing root, cockpit combing and the magazine fairing from the E.II. Almost no early Fokker Eindeckers are assembled exactly the same way. So while we have done our best to capture the usual style of overlapping the cowl panels, they will not always be 100% accurate. Good grief. So they were just like, depending on which guy did the job, I guess. It says, note how the cockpit padding is raised in the middle where the two sides of the cockpit combing meet and is not being rounded. Yeah, you can see that. It comes to a sort of a V, you know, inverted V. A waterproof cover protects the spandau from the elements. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Then speaking of spandaus, we're into the spandau now. So you get your spandau, you've got a choice. You can use A22, which is the one that's already moulded, and then perhaps do some highlighting to make it look, give it a bit of depth on the cooling, outer cooling ring, a shroud. Or if you want to go for the high detail option, you use the photo etch, and you use part A23, and you make your own cowling around it, cooling, what do they call it? The jacket, the metal jacket is just... So basically stop you touching the thing and getting burnt hand for when they land, you know, they just come straight out of a battle. If they, if one of the mechanics were to touch that, it would just fuse your hand, it'd be red hot still. Obviously it's safe when it's got this, the jacket around it, that's the whole point of it really. Empty link deflector, this is for the links coming out of the chute at the side of the machine gun that hold the bullets together. And then we've got some interesting detail here for the cabane strut and turnbuckle and wing warping control cable pulley. And this is quite high-tech stuff. I know it doesn't look it, but it's, in terms of what it's achieving, it's quite high-tech, isn't it? You know, there were no fools, these guys. Yeah, it's all about tension control, isn't it? Says the dark coloured cabane strut is not typical. The pulley and wing walking cable details are the same on the E.II. Okay. So, and then it says the spandau detail. You see it here. Look at that. Spandau detail on the Immelmann E.II, Immelmann's Fokker E.II, seen on page 6. Note the ring sight favoured by Immelmann. He liked a simple ring. You can see that detail or not? He liked quite a simple ring with just a crosshair in the middle. It wasn't one of these fancy ones that's got multiple rings. And there's another photo of it, different angle there. And then you've got your fuel filler cap, and you've got to remember to put your Germania propeller on. Zoom you back a bit for this. There we go. And then on this page we need to zoom you back quite a lot. Then we're going to talk about braking. Ooh. Am I going to build this one? I don't think so, to be honest. Criticise me, go on, I don't blame you, but no, being realistic, I think it's going to be a collector's item, this one, I've got to be honest. And I haven't got the skill to build it. Well, best to be honest, isn't it, really? I don't think I'm up for this. I don't think I can do that. I'd need to build a few others first, but there's a lot of rigging on this. It looks nightmarish. Look at this. The more I stare at it, the more scared I become. Look at that. There's a lot there. I know one of my friends that's a subscriber and regular viewer over in Canada, he's really expert on this. I think he ought to do a tutorial of how to do rigging, because that looks really scary. And look at the rigging underneath here on the for the undercarriage. Ooh. No. I think I'm not up to that. Not up to that standard, I'm afraid. Right, yeah, what have we got here? So, paint scheme and decal guide. Here we go. Oversized cross. Field marked with Biltker's Fokker E.II. Okay, so sometimes they had a bigger white area. Obviously there's a lot of mods done in the field of these. Gives you a bit of history about Immelmann and one or two of his mods he did on his aircraft down here as well, which I won't read all of it. And then we've got Max Immelmann, this is a good photo. Get the light off it. There's Max Immelmann in front of a Fokker E.II on the 26th of October 1915. With his 5th credited victory. A Vickers FB5 crewed by Charles Curtis Daly and Reginald James Slade of 11th Squadron is in the background. Darley was wounded in the arm and their aircraft received about 40 bullet holes. Note the heavily stained and weathered fuselage of the Fokker. You can't really see that well actually in that picture, but anyway. There's another one beneath it. This is a wider shot, and you can still see this Vickers FB5 in the background. Whoops, that one. It says Immelmann perched on the fuselage of his E.II on the same day. Note the cleaned area of fabric around Immelmann's unique fuselage cross. It's like a stretched cross, isn't it? It's not actually. It's kind of asymmetrical. It's not symmetrical. It's stretched to the left. What's all that about? It's very odd. Does it actually tell you here? Doesn't really say, I don't think. It says that it was most likely the result of removing the previously applied marking, probably Biltker's oversized rectangular white cross, which you've seen opposite. The dark brown or grey upper fuselage colour has been partially removed in this area as well. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Okay. The large bullet hole patch 10 on the seen in the wing is dates it as October the 10th, 1915. Gosh, it is a big patch, isn't it? What a great hole. E.II is photographed during a display for Friedrich August the 3rd, the King of Saxony, on the 15th of November. The remains of Immelmann's 4th credited victory from the 10th of October 15, 16 Squadron BE2, the dung heap, or more likely the shit heap, pardon my language, so named for its unconventional camouflage scheme, are on display in the foreground. So obviously they're displaying a shot down Allied plane as bragging rights or whatever. And now we get to the figure himself. Here we go, Max Immelmann figure. So it's a nice resin figure. And yet again, Wingnut Wings really do this well, don't they? So, it's saying you can use acrylics, enamels, oils, etc. Take a wide variety of paint. And there it is, and he looks absolutely brilliant, doesn't he? Very, very lifelike. Also gives you quite a good guide about all the colours, and the lovely flying jacket with the fur-lined leather gauntlet and boots as well. And it's got a picture of Immelmann here at the bottom, which I think is the one that's on the cover of the box. And it says, relaxed Immelmann photographed sometime after he was awarded the Blue Max on the 12th of January 1916. And then on the other side, finally, we've got this, zoom out a bit better, there we go. We've got this last shot, and it says, Immelmann stands smiling in front of his E.II. Fokker Eindecker propellers were usually painted very dark brown, but this one has retained its original laminated finish. Oh yes, you can see that quite well actually. If I zoom in a bit better and get the light off it, see that? See the laminated effect? Definitely. And then, as ever, we have the wonderful, skilled team from Wingnut Wings who made all this possible. Again, I mean, it's an early war, slightly more rudimentary aircraft than one or two of the other ones that we've seen recently, but isn't it nice, you know, isn't it well presented, even showing the man himself, you know, and obviously we've got the figure. So, let's have a look at the plastic. Starting with the man himself. Now, I'm not going to take them out of the bags because it's quite a valuable item, obviously, so forgive me for that. What I'll do is I'll move these across. We'll have a zoom in. There we go. See if we can get it nice and close for you. And we've got him in this beautiful sort of hide and fur-lined flying jacket, which hopefully, there we go. You see the detail there? If we've got a bit too much light, let's just reduce the light slightly. There we go. And there. How's that? So we've got poseable arms, I think. If we pose them in one of two positions. And then we've got his head here, which I need to really turn around to get the view of it. There we go. It's very, very nice. It doesn't look so great on the camera because they've made it white, unfortunately, but as ever, the detail is there. Flying goggles, everything. And you know, it comes on a couple of spigots at the bottom of the resin, so you can mount it into a base if you wanted to. But it's beautifully detailed, very crisp. A really nice figure, that. Very, very good. No complaints there at all. Exactly what you'd expect. Then we have a clear sprue, and it's mainly little windshields, it looks like. A couple of different versions. So with this we get the... Not the right way around? Which way around is it? There we go. See if I can zoom in enough to see this. They're usually really, really crystal clear as well, so not really going to give us any problems, I don't think. Just get the thing to focus. There we go. Yep. Okay, and then we get onto the proper plastic sprues. So, start off with our gnome engine. Yeah, it calls it the gnome here actually on the sprue as well. Gnome 100 horsepower it says. If you can see that, I hope you can. So we've got our cylinders obviously, and we've got the little push rods to go on. Now you use one set of these, not both I think, because I think there's two options, two different versions. So it's quite important to make sure we get the right ones. But the moulding quality is absolutely fantastic, of course. Yeah. So it actually says at the top, it says 132 gnome 100 horsepower here. And at the bottom it says Oberrussel U1 100 PS. Well, they can't both be the same, can they? Not for being pedantic. It's PS and horsepower, not quite the same, but anyway, I won't be pedantic. We've got 2 sprues here that are identical, so we'll just look at one of them. And this is the one with your, it says here it is for the Eindecker. So this is the one that's got our wheels on it. So we've got wheels and tyres, and obviously this is why there's 2 different options on the wheels. So be sure to use the right one for the. This is kind of the early mid version, I think, isn't it, for Max Immelmann. And then we've got our Spandau machine gun here, which of course is the version, both versions actually. So you've got the completed one with its jacket that's all moulded in plastic, or just above it, as ever, we've got the version where you actually put the cooling ring jacket round it, there. So you pay your money, takes your choice on that. But again, total precision in the moulding, beautiful tiny parts, just flawless, you know, as we expect. Now then, something a bit bigger, so we'll have to zoom you out. The wings. Now that is this stretched wing design, you know, tensioned wing for the Eindecker, and as ever you can almost see through because it goes very thin at the back, and we have got some very nice detailing here. Fine ribbing, just very good. Feel it very accurately moulded. It goes very thin at the trailing edge here, very thin indeed. Nice propeller. Get the thing to focus, it's a bit reluctant today. I can't remember which one it is. I've got a feeling that's the one actually. I think it's the one that's got a slight spiral to it. Very nice. And of course it's not that complicated an aircraft, so there's only another 2 sprues in fact, so we'll have a look at the big one, I think. Zoom back out. It is a big sprue, this one. Size of the box. So we've got the 2 sides of the stretched canvas fuselage. We've got our undercarriage framework, mounting framework there. We've got the cowling here, which looks very nice. And then we've got this cockpit coaming. Just got some really nice detail on it actually, as you can probably see. Very nice indeed. And then you've got the floor of the cockpit, a little bit of trim, side shield, and it looks like a control wire. And then finally, on the big sprue, all the other parts. So we've got, this is where we've got some more Spandau. I might have to see me back in for this. A bit more Spandau going on here. I can't remember from memory quite which versions you use, but it may just be that it's doubled up, to be honest. And then we've got some of the racing struts, cabane struts, and you've got the cockpit sides here, which are quite very finely moulded, very nice. And don't seem to have any teddy bears in this one, unfortunately, not like we had in the Roland, but that was perhaps a duo that were a little bit comedians, I think, in that one. I think Immelmann was quite a serious type. And then we've got the seat here, look, got that lovely typical gentleman's drawing room type studded leather seat again, and then there's the seat back there. Just get those reflections off it. There we go, seat back. And what else we got there? Oh yes, we've got the elevators, of course. Zoom out for this bit. Elevators, which are like in one piece, quite thin. And then the rudder, which looks like a helmet. It's like 3/4 of a circle, isn't it, really? It's that way up it would be, actually. That's the top, as you look at it now. Which looks really nice, you know. It's got all the characteristics, hasn't it, of an Eindecker, and it's going to really kind of bring it alive. I think here we've actually got the clip with the machine gun bullets on it. I think that's what I'm looking at. Try and get the thing to focus there. Yeah, see it? Yeah. It's like 4 bullets, and it's as it goes into the machine gun, showing 4 bullets that are not used yet, and the rest have gone and fired. It looks really nice. Looks really nice. Everything you would expect really from a typical another Wingnut Wings masterpiece, and it's not got some of the novelty things on this particular aircraft that we saw on one or two of the others, but it's a very serious aircraft. You know, this was the early days of the monoplane. Very lightweight. They probably didn't feel they could afford any ancillary stuff that wasn't really essential, and so obviously it's just a fighter. It's there as a killing machine with a very specific, focused purpose. And as such, it was clearly very effective until more manoeuvrable, more powerful and faster aircraft came out to supersede it. And sadly our friend Immelmann, for all his skill, I think he probably ran out of luck in the end, didn't he? And he got shot down by the Allies. He probably pushed his luck. It was getting to that stage where it was close to withdrawing this aircraft. It was past its days of supremacy, and I think that perhaps the Allied pilots had learned how to... they'd got better planes coming through, and they'd also learned how to get the better of it. And I think its turn rate I don't think was that brilliant. I think this is why Immelmann developed this technique of doing this Immelmann roll, where he does a half loop and half roll and ends up going back on himself. Very, very clever. I mean, clearly the man was a genius. It's a great shame that he was lost when he was, and it's an even greater shame that people desecrated his tomb. I think that's disgusting, and I'm sure most of the people that hear about this, and if you haven't heard about it already and you learn about it now, I'm sure you'll agree with me that that is completely unacceptable in civilised society, just to get your hands on some bronze or whatever it is. But it was probably stolen for collectors, let's be honest, but that's beyond the pale, isn't it? Anyway, it's obviously from me a 10 out of 10 kit, because it's a beautiful piece of work. The figure's really nice as well. I think that with that dark leather and tan jacket with the fur lining, it looks absolutely of its era, doesn't it? Beautiful. So 10 out of 10 from me. So there we have it. That's the Max Immelmann Fokker E.II. Hope you enjoyed the video and give me 10 out of 10. Thanks ever so much for joining me. I hope you found it interesting. It's certainly quite a historic aircraft, this one, and as I say, it goes beyond just the aircraft itself. It has, the fact that the guy has got modern aviators using his name. That's true legend status, isn't it? Really. So thanks a lot. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so, and click the subscribe button. If you are a subscriber, don't forget to click the notification bell, because then you'll get early alerts that there's a new video coming up. And I can tell you that we have got something new coming. I won't tell you what it is just yet. It's not a Wingnut Wings. It's a World War II aircraft from a relatively new manufacturer in a relatively new country, and it's going to be very interesting, this one. I've seen some photographs and I think we should do a review on this, so that's coming very soon. So perhaps in the next 2-3 weeks we should see something you're not expecting, and I think you'll be quite impressed with it. So that's it from me. Thanks very much for joining me. Hope you all stay safe, and in the meantime, until I see you next time, thanks a lot for all your time. Please give us a like, give us some comments, and don't forget to keep subscribing. And in the meantime, till next time, thanks a lot, and bye for now.